Happy Friday, everybody. Just taking a moment here to go over some of the topics we covered in our Friday coffee chat today, January 15th. We started off by talking about virtual communities of practice, which is a hot topic right now. Many of you are on WhatsApp groups, and WhatsApp just updated their privacy policy, which has created a lot of concern for a lot of people, and so many are jumping ship. So this idea of how do we keep in touch asynchronously with our key groups is something that's very much an important topic right now. So we talked about where are most of our groups forming. We have a lot of Slack channels, but sometimes it's hard to follow all the different channels and then the channels within the channels on Slack. I actually find that the desktop version for me is a little bit better than mobile, and then that's one last thing to follow on mobile, and I can pay attention to Slack as needed. You can actually configure the notifications just as if you were getting an email. Facebook groups. I like Facebook groups. People are already going to Facebook for a lot of their social media. And I like that on Facebook, you can actually, if you don't want to follow, a lot of people don't want to use Facebook, you can actually just look at the groups on your mobile or your desktop. And so I like this because then I can just see a curated list of just my group content, which tends to be a little bit more of what I want to focus on Facebook rather than, personal updates. I want to see the professional updates and the groups that I'm in. So if you're not using Facebook because you don't want to see your news feed, maybe try using it and just looking at the groups as a way to set that boundary for yourself. And it is important to set boundaries. It's important to think about, what do you use your social media for? If you have Slack, if you're on WhatsApp, if you're on Facebook, what do you use it for? And what are your own boundaries? Set time limits. Set times of day that you're going to look at it or not look at it. Decide what you're going to look at on your computer versus your mobile. Create your own best practices. That's how you can keep your sanity with all this. Linda was sharing, she uses Slack, but she just uses it as a reference. She doesn't engage with it that much. She'll just look at it every now and then. I talk about using Facebook just for the group. So you can set your own boundaries. LinkedIn groups, I don't use as much. I find them a little hard to navigate, but a lot of people do use LinkedIn groups. Signal, all of my WhatsApp groups have moved to Signal. It's basically the same platform as WhatsApp, except it's the privacy on Signal tends to be better, so a lot of people are jumping over to Signal instead of WhatsApp. But as it is kind of hard to follow threads, if you have a group that's very active, you might have multiple conversations in one feed that may make it hard to follow. And then we also talked about Kajabi, which Kajabi is a website, online course, e-commerce platform, sort of an all-in-one. But a lot of people aren't going to go to Kajabi for their social media or for interaction because they're just not oriented to it. So you have to think about, if you're trying to start a virtual community of practice, think about where your audience already is. And if you're overwhelmed by how many you're on, think about your own best practices for use. So we spent a lot of time talking about that today. I'll be interested in your thoughts. Then we also covered when to take pro bono work and when not to. And I do things for free sometimes, and I try to set limits on that so I don't get overwhelmed by it. And the way that I make that decision is how it aligns to the audience that I'm trying to reach, or when I think it's going to add value. If you want a type of training and you can offer something for free to get that training, then that's sort of a barter, and maybe it's worth doing that. If someone asks you to do a podcast or a workshop for free, is that the audience that you're trying to reach? And if it's not, then it's an easy no, and you don't have to feel bad about it. But if it is, then you can say yes and get excited because you're going to get great exposure there. So then the other thing is when a client is asking you to maybe reduce the cost, you can think about the things that I try to think about are, if we're trying to reduce the cost, can we reduce the duration, the group size, or potentially the outcomes? And manipulating those three elements can help to then reduce the cost, but without asking me to do the same thing for a lower price. And Linda brought up a really good point that you could also ask for the client or the group to provide some things back to you that would be worthwhile. Again, sort of that mindset of exchange or bartering. For example, maybe they provide introductions inside of the company or referrals beyond the company to other groups you're trying to reach. Maybe they can provide you a testimonial for your website or LinkedIn. And there's also this idea of clicks are currency. If you're trying to increase your search engine optimization, maybe they can do a feature on their blog or newsletter that would get some more clicks to your website. That is highly valuable because the more clicks you get for related work, then you're going to build traffic to your website, which ultimately will get you more work. So there's lots of ways to negotiate for when you're being asked to do pro bono work or work for a lower price. So then the other, let's see, we also talked about charging, when you take your free workshops and then you want to start charging for them, what happens? We started charging for coffee chats. I noticed signups are lower. I'm not sure if that's related to cost. I tend to think time is a more valuable commodity than cost. So I'm hesitant to adjust costs until I know what's the reason. It's still early in the year, so we're going to see how that goes. But we talked about that. So thanks for listening to our coffee chat summary. Just wanted to announce that we are going to not do coffee chats between January 29th and March 5th. We'll start back up on March 5th. The reason is because we're going to do a big overhaul of our website. We're going to have lots of new things going on. So our team's going to take time to regroup and develop that. So we hope to see you in March. We'll have one more in January. So sign up for January 22nd. You can do that by going to dancingwithmarkers.com/events. And if you go there, you will see that the January 22nd is listed, so you can click, grab your spot, and join us for January. We hope to see you next week and then later in March, and thank you for watching this recap.